Hey, DLF, welcome back. Manic and Chill. Of course, we always said we're going to be back every single week, and it's been like, what, almost 3 weeks since we've done the show now, Shane?
I'll say it's been 2 weeks. I'm just gonna
Two
say
weeks,
two.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, there's been so much going on. I've been trying to stay afloat, just following all the information that's over the last couple weeks. And we've had games, we've had lineups, and I think we've kind of shared with each other that it's definitely a challenge when you're in 50 plus leagues, trying to make sure that you're set on everyone, doing the waiver wire. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are the most fun because you got to go through and look at the waiver wire and make sure all your players are on IR and all your IR violations are cleared up from the week before. And so it's just been a whirlwind. So we just wanted to jump on, throw an episode out there just talking about our thoughts the first couple weeks. We'll talk injured players, we'll talk team strategy, we'll talk trade strategy, really any other topics that you have. I know that's what we texted back and forth to talk about. So back to you, my friend. First time in a couple weeks. How's it been going?
No complaints. No complaints. Got through week one. Week one usually makes me feel like I don't know anything at all about fantasy football. I just hide in a cave, and then get through that week. Week two, it starts to normalize, and I'm like, okay, DJ Moore is who I thought he was. I feel better now. Okay, that's good. We're gonna get him 20 points. Naheem Hines isn't actually good at football, and it was nice of Frank Reich to acknowledge that by giving him a grand total of one touch. So Jonathan Taylor's already moved up into that spot where, look, if Saquon Barkley went down and someone was looking to make a move, I think I might take JT straight up over Saquon. Now, I wouldn't, obviously, in a league. I'd be like, no, you got to give me some more. But in my heart of hearts, JT might have already jumped Saquon Barkley in my mind.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's start there. I don't think there's any question. I did a poll right after the injury Sunday night. Saquon JT. It was like 80. It was like 81% JT.
Yeah.
And that's a little recency bias, but honestly, I mean, you said it the other day in one of our group chats, like you never thought we would get to this point where it's like what could have been with Saquon Barkley, but we're now basically losing. We're going to lose an entire one of his years in his rookie contract. Now, I mean, he's got a 5th-year option, so I mean, not saying he's done by any means, but like we draft these guys so high, and Barkley, you remember his value was, I mean, it was sky high before he even was drafted. But then when he got, drafted where he did, basically he was the most expensive rookie I've seen since playing Dynasty. I mean, that includes that includes even Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, his value was already, mid first round startup pick, the year that he came out. So it stinks to lose one of his years under his rookie deal. That's the prime years where you want to have these guys smashing for your teams. But yeah, I mean, if you're a Saquon owner right now, and I would say most Saquon owners are probably pretty decent teams, right? They probably are expecting to have a couple guys like that are going to be able to carry them regardless of how good their other players are. I just traded Saquon today for Dalvin Cook, straight up. I'm taking the loss. I'm not a Dalvin Cook fan, but I went down the line and basically said, okay, if I have any of these running backs, and I'll just throw them out to you. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, I'm not giving them up for Saquon. I mean, just because even if I don't think I'm a contender, I'm still giving up the 3 or 4 years under the rookie deal. And I'm just hitting the button. And those guys have already hit. Right. And you said it with JT. He's already gotten 50 touches in the NFL in 2 weeks. So the path has cleared for him. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, the path cleared from him before the season even started. So those guys have already hit. They've already shown you what you wanted to see. So, I mean, those two are out. I mean, Kamara, Zeke, I mean, obviously McCaffrey's a little bit of a different story because he's hurt himself. But, I mean, if I have Kamara or Zeke, I'm not trading them for an injured Barkley. That doesn't make sense. They're all kind of on the same track in terms of years in the league. So you'd agree with those two, right? You're not jumping to give those two up for Barkley.
Not
and then Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs. I mean, have you seen enough from Josh Jacobs and Miles Sanders to say you put them in the category where you would not trade them straight up for Barkley if you're a kind of a fringe team that you're not sure what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, Jacobs, as much as I didn't think it was going to happen because what the Raiders showed us, apparently what they were telling us was the truth, not what they showed us. They're going to use Jacobs in the passing game, which is what we needed from him. That was the only thing that, kind of made us all worried that like he couldn't be an elite top tier running back. Well, if they're going to be giving him the targets, I mean, he had another 3 receptions Monday night, I think. Even though Darren Waller had, I think, 30 targets, 30, something like that. Because Derek Carr's air yards is, I think, 4 total. But no, I'm not trading Kamara for Barkley, and I love Barkley. You know that. Barkley was one of those guys that I was one of those people that was like, I will give you everything on God's green earth to get Barkley. And unfortunately, last year with his ankle and the Giants line being trash, and then guess what? Their line is still trash this year. Right. Next year, they're going to fix that line overnight? No. And he's going to be coming back from a torn ACL. And yes, look, it's been tweeted out there that Adrian Peterson came back from a torn ACL and led the league in rushing the next year. Adrian Peterson is not human. He's 35 years old, and the dude could still go out there and put out 100 yards if you gave him 25 touches. It's just, some people aren't human. Even if Barkley comes back, though, I give me the guy Kamara, who's roughly the same age, who's hopefully tied to Drew Brees. Even this year, Drew Brees is another guy. He can't throw anymore. And as long as Michael Thomas is out, Alvin Kamara might end up seeing 120 targets this year. And with running backs, I'm not really looking further than 2 years out, to be quite honest with you. But on that age discount, no way I'm going to give you Josh Jacobs or Miles Sanders what I'm getting 4 years on Miles Sanders. Or excuse me, on Saquon Barkley. Nope, not going to do it. We just saw Sanders come back. In his first game he played, he had 85% snap share. 4 receptions, 20 carries, touchdown, even with a fumble. Like he's the horse there. Just I love Barkley, but he's to the point now where he's certainly acquirable though. So he is someone that if you have pieces on your team that aren't elite and you want to try to package them to get that, elite Barkley. I mean, Barkley's not dead. He's still going to be a top 8 running back, hopefully. But if you're going to buy, now's the time to do it.
He's going to come back. And here's the thing. I mean, this is bad timing for his injury, but he's also going to come back on the precipice of his 5th-year option. So he has an incentive to get back and be 100% and smash next year. Even if the team isn't that great, he has incentive to come back and, basically ball out in his 4th year, no doubt. So I'm not worried about him going forward. The ACL injury, especially happened in September, it doesn't worry me. We've seen him. I mean, he came back last year from his high ankle sprain, and he won you the league in the playoffs. If you had Barkley last year, he absolutely crushed in the playoffs. I mean, he scored over 60 points in, week 15 and week 16. So, I mean, he crushed for you last season. So I'm not worried about him getting back. But, you mentioned some of the other guys. I mean, Zeke under contract, tied to that offense for the next 2 years. I'm not giving that up if I'm a contender or if I even have a good team. There would be no point. Even if I'm a 4th, 5th, 6th place team, if I can just sneak in the playoffs, I think you're still dangerous. And Kamara, even if he's not tied to Breeze, he's tied to Sean Payton. Whoever they bring in there is going to use him. I mean, I don't know if they're going to use him the exact same way as Breeze, but so what I just went down the line and I said, okay, if I think Dalvin Cook is the breaking point. And this was a team where I won the championship last year, and I'm like, hey, I'll do the deal. I mean, Dalvin Cook could get hurt this weekend, and then that's looking like a terrible deal. Because I think, unlike Barkley, if a guy like Cook had another serious injury, I think his value's dead at that point. I think he doesn't have the capacity to absorb another season-ending or significant injury. But Shane, something else that's happened since we did the last episode. All the running backs got paid. Kamara, Cook, Mixon, they all got paid. And now, the 2 guys that haven't been paid that have absolutely smashed. I mean, Aaron Jones, you talk about regression. He's actually negatively regressed from last year. He's even better than he was last season. So, I mean, that's a guy that, even Tariq Cohen got paid more than $6 million a year. So if I'm Aaron Jones, I'm almost sitting there going like, man, I'm not taking the field until that, at least what you gave Tariq Cohen is already in my bank account. Like I'm, you know what I mean? Like there's no incentive.
Tariq Cohen's entire contract needs to be Adams. Jesus Christmas. How old am I? I can't remember his name. I'm literally talking about him right now. But that needs to be just Tariq Cohen's whole contract needs to be the guaranteed money.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron Jones is special, man.
He's just real good.
I hate
He's real
using,
good.
non-quantifiable terms like special, but some guys you just watch him on the field and you're like, oh, he's different. And he's a guy, towards the end of the summer, I was like, let me try to buy him because I think, let me try to acquire him in a few leagues because I don't care if he's in Green Bay next year. That dude's going to be good, really good somewhere. And he could even, I hate to say, he could even be better because he's, still tied to a committee with Jamal Williams is an excellent second back, and you got to get him touches. And of course, they have the illustrious AJ Dillon there, who eventually will get worked in, I guess. But he isn't. Yeah, all these running backs got paid except for Aaron Jones, and every week they don't pay that guy. He's just going out there and going, all right, there's another million. There's another million.
Yeah. Well, and the narrative of, well, he doesn't play all the snaps. It doesn't even matter. He might only play 60, 65% of the snaps, but he gets 90% of the good touches for fantasy. He gets a lot of the targets. He gets all the goal line carries. He makes all the big plays. So, I mean, it really just, it's almost like the Mark Andrews argument. It doesn't matter. He's so efficient, tied to such a good quarterback in an offense where he's always wide open. It really just doesn't matter. So, I mean, Aaron Jones, Chris Carson is another one. I don't know if Chris Carson's worthy of getting paid, but I mean, 3 receiving touchdowns so far in 2 weeks. How much is that to Russell Wilson? I don't know, but I mean, those two guys are knocking on the door. So the bottom line is, I think if you're trying to buy Saquon Barkley, my strategy is this. I mean, I think that once you get past Dalvin Cook, once you get to that point where you're looking at a lot of the rookies from this year, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, going down into that range, I'm actually fine, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm a first-place team, and I have Derrick Henry, or I have Nick Chubb, or I have Joe Mixon. I'm fine actually trading them away on a great team and trying to get Barkley. And the first offer I make is, hey, my Derrick Henry for your Barkley in a second. And just see what you do. I'd probably take it straight up, but I'm going to ask for the tax first and just see how you react. How desperate are you to replace Barkley? But I think once you get down into that range, I think any team is viable to trade for Barkley, regardless of how good you are. You hear this, are you a contender? Are you not a contender? Shane, it's week 2. I think every team is still a contender, unless you've just quit and you've lost 10 players to injury, which, knock on wood, is possible. I think every team is still a contender. If you're 1-1 or you're 0-2 with more than, you're not the second or third lowest in the league in points, I think you're still a contender. So what's your thoughts on the strategy acquiring Barkley?
Yeah, I mean, that's another one of those. I'm always fine with acquiring really good players. I don't care where the status of my team is. And like you said, I guess there are some teams that you go into the season and you go, wow, I really crapped the bed on this startup draft. I really went about it poorly, or I made some really boneheaded trades in the offseason. And, I kind of knew that this team wasn't going to do well. I don't care. You still try to get Barkley because Barkley is the type of player that he's going to win you weeks by himself when next year, obviously. And if I had Derrick Henry, I'll give Derrick Henry up 7 days a week for Barkley because, look, I love Henry. They refuse to use that dude in the passing game. They just refuse. He had 25 carries this week for 86 yards. So he had 25 touches and he gave you 8.6 points. If you're in a point per carry league, that's great, but most people aren't. That's more of a thing for nerds like us. Nick Chubb, man, I don't know. It's because of the recency bias of what I just saw him do to the Bengals, who are a terrible defense. But you see what he can be when used correctly. Now, will he be? God only knows.
I think that's why you do it, though, because I guess I think Chubb and Mixon and Henry are 3 of the best workhorses we've ever seen in the league. I mean, those guys you can give them the rock 25 times a game, but I think they are what they are. And I think the only thing that maybe puts Chubb, maybe Henry ahead of those two or ahead of Mixon is just, they have the capability of having those games, like Henry did in week 1 or Chubb did in week 2, where it's like they can put up 30 points, but it all has to be between the tackles, long runs, touchdowns. There is no floor. And so I'm more willing to bank to trade that away. Just banking that, Chubb's probably in my lineup every week. Henry's in my lineup every week. But I mean, look what you got against Henry. Henry was one of the top, he was one of the top DFS touts this past week of, oh my gosh, he's just going to mow over the Jaguars. And you said it. He went out and basically just got you empty calorie yards, right? He just got a lot of carries and a lot of yards. If he doesn't get in the end zone, he doesn't give you any floor through the passing game. And the game script can easily just turn away from using him. Maybe a couple of touchdowns don't go his way, and boom, he's under 10 points. That doesn't mean you're off of him, but that is what he is. So
they're not going to use him in the passing game. It's not going to happen, and it's hard a lot of times in fantasy football, and I'm guilty of it too, where you go, this makes sense, this is what should happen, and it just doesn't. Look, Derrick Henry is an absolute monster. You get him in the screen game, and I mean, there's people making business decisions. They're like, I am not tackling this guy. We saw what he can. We've seen what he can do. Like, he can literally run through, over, and just over around people. He can, and you see that, and you're like, oh, if they just do that 3 times a game to him, they're not going to. They're just not. You're going to have those outlier games where they do, and it's going to get your hopes up because he's going to drop 45 points. And you're going to be like, this is what I can get. But then, you're going to have these weeks where he gives you less than 10. And you didn't draft him to be your low-end flex play. This is your running back 1. So that means your running back 1, you're probably giving up 10, 15 points, to whoever you're playing that week. Joe Mixon's interesting. I'd give up Joe Mixon all day for Saquon, not even close. Yeah. Are we worried about Joe Mixon yet? Because he was not on the field a lot when they were in comeback mode.
Yeah, this is it's one of those. I mean, anyone that watched the game, I've nitpicked this on Twitter and showed the clips and everything, but he had that stretch where he had 3 catches in like a 5-play span the second quarter, and you're just like, dude, why? If we could just see this, you don't need 8, 9, 10 catches a game, right? If you can just get 5 from Mixon or Henry or Chubb, you're sitting on 50, 60 for a season. That's good. These guys can carry the ball 300 times. I mean, that's their path to, hitting that elite upside. So, you've seen it, but yeah, it's concerning when I think 23 straight plays Giovanni Bernard's on the field, and they're empty calorie snaps. Yeah. They're not using Giovanni Bernard. He's not out there running routes that you wish Mixon would run. He's just out there. He'll pass block, he'll leak out, but they're not even targeting the running backs. They're not even looking at the running backs. And then you see something interesting with you take these guys, and I don't think this player is a just pure better talent. Physically, he's very, very close to these guys. But, you look at Jonathan Taylor, right? I don't think he's much different than the 3 we're talking about. But he's in an offense where they consciously try to use him on a couple screens a game. They're trying to get him the ball, even as an unnatural pass catcher. It's like, hey, let's throw Jonathan Taylor a screen because you know what? If he catches it and has some room to run, the other team doesn't want to tackle him. It's possible he can, break away and make a big play in the screen game, just because we throw him a screen pass, and you just don't see that from, some of the other players. So with this offense, my concern on Joe Mixon is essentially, I think that Mixon, he's just pigeonholed. I mean, I'm continually going to buy Joe Mixon. And sorry, we lost Shane, it looks like, but he'll be back in a second. I'm going to continually buy Joe Mixon if his price continues to be faded in Dynasty. But I can totally understand the idea that people are off of him. His stock is down, and we've seen this enough to where, that it may never come back. He's not going to be a desired asset because now we're going into year 4, even though he got his contract extension. Is he going to get better with Joe Burrow? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the idea here was, how can you get Saquon Barkley? And I think once you get past Dalvin Cook, I think anybody's fair game. It can be Mixon, it can be Henry, it can be Nick Chubb, it can be any of the rookies, it can be Austin Eckler, it can be Kenyon Drake, it can be anybody that's below that range. I think they're all fair game, potentially to get to Saquon Barkley, regardless of the strength of your team. Regardless if you are the first place team, you're 2-0, you lead the league in points. If I have Derrick Henry, I'm still trading him for Barkley. Now, does that mean I'm going to approach the Barkley owner and say, hey, make it worth my while? No, I may just fish offers out there and see, what can I get? I'm going to certainly try to get a tax on top of those guys because I'm bailing the Barkley owner out. I mean, remember that. I am bailing the Saquon Barkley owner out if he just lost Barkley and I have Henry or I have Chubb or whatever, I'm bailing them out. So I'm asking for the tax. I'm going to go and say, hey, Derrick Henry for Barkley in a second. And I'd rather have the second in a super flex league. Single quarterback league, I don't think next year the second rounders are going to move the needle a whole lot. You're basically going to be looking at receivers with those picks. There's so many receivers right now. That's a whole nother argument. But at this point, I'm looking at, I'm going to make them pay the tax if they want Barkley. Hey, Shane, you're back.
Hey, yeah. So
I was just ranting about how to get to Barkley. Doesn't even matter where your team is. I kind of talked about Mixon a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I just think you got to go down the line and say, who are you comfortable with straight up and throw the offers out there. I actually want to be the aggressor. I told you I sold Barkley for Dalvin. I'm going to be the aggressor this weekend in trying to go the other way. Teams that maybe I think, hey, I'm going to try to just go, let's just get by at running back. You know what I mean? I'll give away the Henrys or the Mixons or the Chubbs and see if they're willing to sniff around. If they're not, if they want to hold strong and don't want to, trade them away, I get it. But I think it's worth trying on any team.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, and I always teach aggression and I always preach aggression anyway. I'm definitely not one of those people that likes to wait for things coming to you, because when you do that, you tend to look at your emails and go, damn, I wish I would have made an offer on that player because I would have given that up all day. So just as a side note, always be aggressive. Like, don't be stupidly aggressive, obviously. If you're not sure of you think if trade offer's fine or if it's fair, just use the Dynasty League football trade analyzer app. Which I actually use.
Let me ask you one. Let me ask you one real quick, because this one will hit home for you.
No.
You are a team that is kind of quasi in contention. Let's say you're 1-1, middle of the pack, but you like your team. You think you have a chance. You have a couple other elite pieces. You've avoided the injuries thus far. Are you adding anything to J.K. Dobbins to get Barkley?
No.
Okay. So he's already in that range of, if you have Dobbins and you're maybe looking towards 2021, like, can you see if everything goes Dobbins' way, maybe he flashes a little bit more this season, heading into next spring, can you see him going like kind of side by side with Barkley in terms of value, just because he's on the Ravens and all? I mean, What are your thoughts on that? Because I think that's a real interesting one that the Dobbins owner probably is already looking to a year out anyway.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. Most of the people that drafted Dobbins, we did so with the assumption that, like, at best, he's going to take that job over in the middle of the year, right? Yeah. At best. There's every chance, though, and you have to think of this when you draft him, there's every chance that he's just not. He's going to have weeks where he had, like he just had, where he had 2 touches. But you know what he did with one of them? He broke it off for 44 yards, and you go, that's it. That's the special right there. You know what I mean? Yep. Where he's lost all types of balance, and he's still ripping it for 44 yards, basically on just muscle memory. So I think anyone that drafted J.K. Dobbins, or most people that drafted J.K. Dobbins, probably targeted him in the draft and felt fortunate when they got him, like I did it. Like, oh, I'm getting J.K. Dobbins at 106. Okay, thanks, guys. Because, you go in the next year. I love Mark Ingram. Guy's great. He's going to be 33 years old at that point. No way he's getting another contract from Baltimore. And even if he does, 33, it's kind of like when you have – someone told me this before I had kids, just because you have one kid and you have one more, it's not really like having 2 kids at that point, It's not like it's like the earthquake. It's a 5 on a Richter scale and then a 6, and you're like, well, it's not that different. It's very different, 32 to 33. J.K. Dobbins is, I think everyone knows that he is going to be a monster. And he is going to be, and behind that line, it doesn't matter if he's as good as Saquon on a real football level, because behind that line, he can produce as much as as Saquon can in fantasy.
Yeah, I think that what we've learned thus far with the Ravens is they may actually be too good for some of their fantasy pieces, to where there's going to be games where they don't need to go all out for fantasy. But really, you just want everybody tied to that team. I mean, the efficiency just spread around to every single player, the tight ends, the wide receivers, the running backs, obviously Lamar Jackson. But yeah, I mean, the efficiency that we've seen from there, you heard regression for Jackson in terms of his touchdown rate, but I think you're just going to want players tied to that offense. It's almost like the Chiefs, but maybe at this point a little bit more concentrated. And you'd rather maybe have some pieces that are, the Chiefs, for as good as they are, their receivers can be a mess week to week in terms of which ones you want to throw in there, who's going to get used where. But yeah, you just want pieces of that offense because it's so efficient. I want to shift to any other running backs you want to talk about. We can talk about McCaffrey, but I have a feeling he's either going to be back super quick within like 2 weeks, or this is going to be an injury that just kind of lingers for a while, and then he chooses not to come back because they're 0-6, 0-7 or something like that. I mean, I don't think there's not an angle you can make with McCaffrey, though, because I don't think the owner has completely given up on him because he's only out a month or something.
And that's the thing. Even if he misses 5 games, and you knew today he was going to miss 5 games, well, guess what? That still leaves me another 5 or 6 games to rip off and win to get into the playoffs. And most of the last spots, it's not like the 6 seeds or 7 seeds, depending on the size of your league. It's not like people are running away with those last seeds. It's not like I've never been in a league where one guy's like 4 games ahead. Going into the playoffs, it's always a game or 2 here, and you know what I mean, that close. There's no reason to sell him. Now, if someone wants to give you a Godfather offer, obviously, I kind of hope he takes the full 6 weeks. Partly because I want Mike Davis to go out there and get 10 receptions for 100 yards, so I can flip him for a 2nd-round pick at some point. But also because we just went through this with Barkley last year. When he came back and it was evident he should have taken a couple more weeks off. And it took a while.
So you're a Barkley owner, though. If you're a Barkley owner, do you add something significant and target the McCaffrey owner? Because what if that owner's 0-2 and he's now looking at McCaffrey out for a month or more and he's saying, I'm not really sure about this season. He may just want to go full punt and acquire Barkley plus. What would you offer on top of Barkley? Let's just call it 12-team Superflex. What would you add to Barkley to get McCaffrey and gamble that maybe second half of the season you can get those points back?
I mean, I'll throw picks
late first.
That's about as much as I'll do because I have those guys. I've been one of those people that's been like, look, Barkley's every bit as good as CMC, and we're going to see it when he's healthy again this year. Well, we got another year off, but I definitely have to pay that tax because guess what? He ain't playing this year, and McCaffrey seemingly and hopefully will. Again, and when McCaffrey comes back, he's going to do what McCaffrey does. He's going to get 10 receptions for 100 yards. And it's just that Teddy has shown that Carolina defense is terrible. Look, nothing's going to change with McCaffrey when he comes back, assuming he's healthy. He's going to be the guy that you drafted or, the guy that you think you're trading for. So, yeah, I'd pay that tax because a title's worth it.
Yep. No, I think that's a decent gamble to make. And you may get McCaffrey back by week 5. You may get him out until week 8 or 9. I mean, you're taking the risk. So it might be worth inquiring. These are all moves you have to make within your league. Really depends on, I've looked in a couple leagues and I see the Barkley owner. I'm like, yeah, he's already 0-2 and getting slaughtered. So, I mean, he's not going to trade him away at any sort of discount. And then vice versa. There's times where, obviously the owner that is contending, may not give up some of these pieces that you want to make the swap with. So let's talk receivers. A couple big ones that went down. Courtland Sutton, Paris Campbell, those two come to mind. Sutton, the injury is a little bit concerning for him, so I want to talk to you about that one. I've been recommending basically that if you have Courtland Sutton, I don't want to say that this is the end for him, but I think this is the end for him of being any chance of ever getting to a quote-unquote like elite receiver. I think he's stuck now. He's going to be 25 before he ever plays another game. I think he's stuck in this wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, massive group of just, I don't want to say junk, but there's just a ton of receivers that are in that range. And we've talked about this before. They're all kind of the same week to week. Any of them can blow up and be the wide receiver 1, but any of them could also be outside the top 36. I mean, right now he's wide receiver 16. I think he could probably fall down into the 20s, the low 20s, but because he's hurt. The other guys are going to pass him up. I mean, what are you doing with Sutton? Because basically right now, if I can trade him for any other wide receiver 3 or better, I'm doing it. I mean, that includes really anybody. I mean, I've gone as low as I'll trade him for Devontae Parker. I'll trade him for Michael Gallup. Someone even said Darius Slayton for Courtland Sutton. And I'm sitting there going, hey, Sterling Shepard out, Barkley out. You may get the production. So, I mean, what are you doing with Sutton? Are you willing to cast him off or what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm willing to cast wide receivers off because I'm like you. Wide receivers are replaceable. It's not the running backs that are replaceable people. It's the wide receivers.
Right.
I heard a smart guy talking the other day on his podcast, and I really loved this one, was Courtland Sutton for Tyler Lockett. And that's a move I think I'd make 10 days till Sunday. Lockett
Can
still
you do
doesn't
it though?
that's the thing. I don't know. I give you Courtland Sutton and maybe throw in a second because seconds are my standard. I'll throw it in to get the
Yep.
Tyler Lockett. But right off the bat, I'll try Courtland Sutton and I'll pitch that. Well, he's injured right now, but he'll be 25 when he comes back. Tyler Lockett's going to be, 28, 29. He's hitting that age. He's going to fall off the cliff really soon. I don't think he's going to, but I'll say it.
Robert Woods.
Yeah, I'll give me Woods. Yeah,
I know you love Woods. I think that's a slam dunk with how he's been used so far. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And then when Woods re-upped with, which I still don't know how the Rams are doing this. It's all magic money. But the Rams re-upped with Woods. I'm sold on him as I'll let him die on my roster now. He's a guy that, I wanted to move and I couldn't because the community's never been very high on him. Except for me and a few other people who have them all over our rosters. We're a strong contingent out there. But so I was going to try to move him a little bit because I was like, look, I don't know if he's going to be in Los Angeles anymore because they don't have the money. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter. They're putting it on the credit card. He's going to be there for probably 3 or 4 more years. He can die on my roster. So I trade Courtland Sutton every day of the week for Robert Woods. Robert Woods every week. The worst week he's going to give you is a wide receiver 2 week.
Yeah.
And there's
I was looking at the list and like the 3 that jumped out at me, the guys that are 27 or older that have seen some volatile value, or maybe people are not completely sold on them. It's Woods, it's Lockett, and Stephon Diggs. And thus far, they're like 3 of the best receivers in the league. So, good luck getting those deals done. But I think that's where you start. And I'm with you. Like if you have to add a piece, just, send it straight up. If the person declines, which, if I have one of those guys, why would I do it? If I have any aspirations of trying to set a competitive lineup, especially deeper leagues with more flexes where I can just throw in more receivers, why would I do it straight up? It doesn't make sense. But then if you come to me and say, Courtland Sutton and a super flex second, okay, maybe I'm listening there. Maybe then I look and say, well, hey, I can replace Robert Woods. So why don't I take the higher upside risk and maybe with that extra second that I get, I can go out and buy a old receiver. I can go buy Julian Edelman. Maybe he'll get me by for the rest of the season. I don't lose anything. I replace Woods' production by buying Edelman for the second. Guess what? I have a free Courtland Sutton next summer. So I think there's always that give and take. Sorry, I cut you off with you were going to mention some other guys, but go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, look, just what Robert Woods, he gives you something that not many receivers give you, consistency. And Robert Woods is the perfect guy for a Courtland Sutton trade because it's going to be, hey, do you value youth? Because you got that with Courtland Sutton, and Robert Woods, he's older, air quotes, in the Dynasty community's eyes. But yeah, and we already said Tyler Lockett, that's a guy we'd move for. I don't know about Darius Slayton.
You're taking the risk with Slayton too, for sure.
He does things, like week 1, he comes out and you're like, oh my God, I think he might actually be the alpha. And then, you think he's going to smash week 2. And it's just like, oh, wait, well, here's the downside with him. If I can get a pick with Slayton, which I think I can, I could swallow that a lot easier. And we could always use my favorite standard. You give me a second, and I might even throw in a third for you because that psychological difference between a second and a third is enough to make it work for me. And I can use that second much more than I can use a third when it comes to time to trade it.
What about Devontae Parker? Because I'm looking more at his last year and a half. He's as consistent as good as all these other guys I've mentioned. So it really comes down to, can you get over the bias of the first 4 years of his career and just kind of take what he's done over the last season and a half and accept that for what he is? But I look at him and say, I would do that straight up. And I think that's one that you could hit today and send that offer. And I do think the other owner will sit there and go, hey, this may be the best offer I ever get for Parker. So maybe they'll think about it. But I think you could get that one done, don't you think?
Yeah, I think definitely the guy, because Parker, look, because of that bias that you spoke of, I think most of us that have Parker in our leagues always are nervous with him. Always.
Yeah.
We're going, like, he's giving me a good week. How much longer? He's on the injury report again. I don't know how long this is going to last. So I think that's definitely a trade you could make.
Like, you don't look at his name when you're submitting your lineups, and you don't see it the same way you see Robert Woods, Julio Jones. You know what I mean? Even though his production is right in line, you look at him and go, I don't know. Can he do this for the 20th straight week? But I totally get what you mean. Like, you just look at him in your lineup and you don't categorize him subconsciously the same way as you do the other guys.
You look at him and Mike Williams and you go, oh, which one am I starting this week? When really the answer should be Devontae Parker. And I like Mike Williams. But yeah, he's definitely in your mind. He's in that lower tier. And part of it, obviously, we were worried about Preston Williams coming back and taking over as the alpha there, but that doesn't seem to be the case right now. And yeah, Parker, look, he did a couple so far this year. He's played through injury, which is something that we've kind of wanted to see in the past too. Some guys, and it's not often, some guys do just take longer to get it. And he might be the type of guy that it took longer to get it. Miami paid him, so they believe in it, right? Make that move.
So if you're buying Courtland Sutton, which I'm not advocating doing, I'm actually taking the approach of I have 3 Courtland Sutton shares. Unfortunately, I have Devontae Parker on all 3 teams. I mean, what are the odds? So that option's out for me. So I'm kind of like, I have to go the other routes and see if they'll move the other players. But I'm fine with buying back into Sutton next spring, next summer. I'll take him I know we'll do a couple startups. I'm sure I'll take him next summer just because, hey, I'm buying the fact that he's rehabbed. I'm not taking any risk. You know what I mean? If he has a setback with the knee and he's not ready next year, I basically acquired another asset that I'm going to have some volatility going into next year. So I'm fine buying Sutton back in next summer once I get more information on his injury. But if you wanted to buy him now as a rebuilding team, as a quote-unquote tanking team that's trying to shed the points off their roster, right? Would you do like are you good trying to move like A.J. Green plus Adam Thielen plus T.Y. Hilton plus to try to get Sutton and kind of get younger? I think that's the move.
That's a good
to try
move.
To get Sutton is shed an older player, an older guy that maybe can still produce as a top 24 receiver, but the buying window ends as soon as the season's over. No one's going to want to buy those guys when the season ends just because of their age.
Yeah, I think the only one that you're going to be able to pull off is Adam Thielen, and you're also going to need to wait until a week when Minnesota isn't god-awful again. You can't do it this week, but, maybe next week it'll be good Minnesota week, and Adam Thielen will do, Adam Thielen things, 8 for 120 and a touchdown, and then you could make that move. Because, Adam Thielen, he's a guy that, I know I've had on a few different rosters. You couldn't get a second for him in the offseason. A second for a guy that, had wide receiver 1 upside. He's a guy that's shown that he can do it, but he's 30 years old, 31 years old, coming off injury. Next year, he'll be even older. So the Sutton, I'd trade him for Sutton if I could, obviously on a non-contender. I don't know if you're going to be able to pull off Hilton, although you could always tell the story that, like, look, without Paris Campbell there, who else are they going to throw to? You think Zach Pascal's going to break out in year 3 or 4? Like, we've seen the Zach Pascal story before. Make sure you mention that to him. Like, he's going to have a game. He's going to have a 100-yard game at some point this season, but then he's going to come out the following week and throw up a donut. So T.Y. Hilton's the only guy he's got to throw to, right? And Mo Alley Cox.
Yep.
You could sell that story, I'm sure.
Yeah, you could. One more thing I wanted to ask you about receivers. So some data. I don't know if you've seen the stuff I've posted on Twitter, but thus far, 27 receivers outside the top 50 in DLF have already posted top 36 weeks. So it's happening again. Now, there's some names in there, but there's a couple I wanted to pick your brain on, like Russell Gage. Is he a thing?
So right now, I'm actually writing an article, and he's in it. And I'm leaning. The further I dig into it, I'm leaning yes. Now, again, this isn't a long-term thing. This is like a 1-year thing where I think Atlanta's defense might be historically bad, and they are going to have to throw the ball about 40 times a game. And Russell Gage, just right off the bat, some of the things that I like that I've seen so far is the high snap share. Besides a high volume, obviously. And he's got good volume. And if Julio gets injured at any point, then it's Calvin and Russell Gage, and I couldn't even tell you who another wide receiver on that team is.
Zacchaeus, but yeah, he's only had 2 targets thus far this year.
So. Zacchaeus Amadeus, yes.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, you've seen Russell Gage involved with Hayden Hurst and Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. So if one of them were to go away, man, I mean, the floor of just them passing the ball 45 times a game, yeah, I mean, just sheer volume. And that's the guy, you know what? That's the kind of player I would want on my team for the rest of the season. Because if he put up, 70 catch season or something like that, people will buy in next year. There will be a sector of people in your league that say, oh, yeah, he's going to be the guy that, is going to give me consistency going forward, or at least he's a wide receiver 3 going forward. So you'll be able to sell him for more than what you can right now for sure. So I like that call.
Give him a few weeks to marinate and appreciate. I mean, because honestly, right now, what are you selling him for? You're selling him for a third. I mean, a third is useless. I mean, we can pretend that
it's got to be a second.
We hit on guys that are on in the third round, and we remember it for the rest of our lives. But the hit rate is about 5%. So for that, I'll just play it out and see what happens.
Here's another one I wanted to throw out to you. This guy is tied for 10th in the league in targets, but he really hasn't had that earmark breakout yet. But just thinking Courtland Sutton. N'Keal Harry, any thoughts on N'Keal Harry?
He's going to have volume. He feels like Kelvin Benjamin, part 2. Where, we talked, not everyone, obviously, but we kind of talked ourselves into, well, Kelvin Benjamin's going to get the volume. No, he's not fast, but he's a big body and Cam likes him. Look, when you have to get 10 targets to get me 15 points, it's not great. It's not great, Bob, Julian Edelman's the deep threat there, kind of. I guess Demir Bird, really, but of the super fantasy relevant players, it's Julian Edelman. That volume is going to fade at some point. Like I don't like guys that are just volume based and that's all they can do. It's a shame because he looked like a superstar in college. But he's a guy that I'm willing to trade at a loss right now. But I'll give him a couple more weeks where he can get that volume and people talk themselves into it and they'll remind themselves that Cam made Kelvin Benjamin a top 24 receiver. And then they'll forget what happened, in the subsequent years. Right after that, when Kelvin Benjamin became an actual trash can on the field. Different. Harry's obviously in better shape. But unfortunately, he has no separation skills whatsoever. Like, I don't think he could beat me off the line. And I'd be smoking a cigarette across from him. So that's terrible.
Yes, you would. 2 more I want to pick your brain on. Wide receiver 20 thus far in the season. Are you buying the Corey Davis rebound?
I want to.
He looks good. He looks good.
He's done this to me before, though, Scott. He's done this to me before where he's had these games or even these couple stretches of games. And I'm like, that's the Corey I know and love. Look at him. He looks like a star. He only had 3 receptions the other day with AJ Brown not in. That's disconcerting. He was out targeted by a tight end. It's disconcerting. I want to buy in. I do. I want to see him in Eagles green and then maybe I could start rooting for them again. But I'm not willing to pay anything significant. Look, in a 16-team league, I thought about offering a second for him, and I didn't. I just couldn't. I couldn't do it.
Well, it's another year. We heard the same narrative with Aaron Jones. Ryan Tannehill is 19th in the NFL in pass attempts, but Ryan Tannehill is top 8 in the league in terms of fantasy points. So again, we're basically just seeing that offense operate and AJ Brown's out now. So, I mean, I'm almost looking at Corey Davis like he's one of those options where it's either him or Jonnu Smith if AJ Brown's in there. But 2 or 3 of those guys every week, I think, are viable plays just because I'm buying into the efficiency now. We've seen it for, let's give it a couple more weeks. But maybe that's just the offense. Maybe it's the offense designed that way that's going to produce efficiency that we never anticipated and we haven't seen in a long time. So, I don't know. Corey Davis's value has jumped up to where you can't buy him for a second. I've tried to buy him for a second, which sounds crazy. No one's selling. that they're riding the train going, hey, while A.J. Brown's out, there's no reason for me to sell for a second because he's already shown, maybe the flashes of why people would have wanted to stash him heading into free agency. Last one, wide receiver 17, Shane. You know who this is?
No idea.
Came out of nowhere. Wasn't even a top 110 receiver on DLF. He was rumored to get cut in July.
This can't be Keelan Cole.
It's Keelan Cole.
Keelan Cole.
Man,
you're just hitting all these guys that I'm going to be dropping an article on.
Okay. Well, you know what? Plug your article because I didn't even know about it.
Well, I didn't finish writing it, but Keelan Cole. So here's the thing: his snap share was like 68 and then 61% first two games. His target share is not especially high. He's now in his fourth year. I can't buy it. I can't. I'm not. So I'm selling. Keelan Cole feels like about 160 other guys that are going to hit 1 week or hit 2 weeks or hit 3 weeks, and then you're going to be like, oh, I should have held on to him. You know what I mean? There's nothing special about Keelan Cole in any sense of the word. I did some digging. I looked, I want to look for something. I want to undrafted free agent guys breaking out in their fourth year. That's a fun story. Everybody wants to get behind that. It's not sustainable. He's got about a 95% catch rate, which I'm thinking is going to come down. I'm thinking that's going to drop a little bit. I see DJ Chark. I'm not worried about him. If anyone else is, I say buy now. But I see, DJ Chark's going to reassert himself there, and Laviska Shenault is becoming an all-around weapon, and I think they're going to lean on James Robinson a lot. So I'm selling Cole. I don't know what you're getting now. That's the thing.
Any third you would take and walk away?
Yeah, I love trying to do I'll give you my third and Keelan Cole for a second, but the Dynasty community is too smart for that anymore. They don't fall for that nonsense, but if I can do it, I will. For a third, I think I'll hold another couple weeks just to see what happens.
Interesting.
Yep.
So last thing, any other players on your mind right now that are just like the kind of the it things first couple weeks, automatic flips, players you're actively going through your teams going, oh, I got that guy. Let me spam him out for a third or spam him out for a second or spam him out for fab. I mean, anybody that comes to mind. I know the backup running backs, Nick Mullins, Jeff Driscoll. I mean, all those guys are fair games. Anybody that comes to mind, have you had any successes either?
No, not a lot. Like Mike Davis is a guy that, obviously with CMC down, he's a guy that you're going to try to sell now. Jet, as much as I love Jerick McKinnon's story, that is awesome. That dude is coming back off 2 major injuries, and it feels like it's just another injury waiting to happen.
And he's got to play on that Giants turf this weekend. I mean, if he can get through that game, I actually feel more confident about it. But, I mean, I would not be shocked if he left that game injured. I mean,
he looks like the Jet of old, it's awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't buy, look, I know outliers are outliers for a reason, right? But guys coming back off of 2 missed years off of major injuries and then coming back and being, special in the league again, it doesn't happen. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Jet's going to go out there and look, he might give you a few more weeks where he really does well because he's going to be set up for that with Mostert being injured and Tevin Coleman apparently being, his knees jacked up too. And Jet's a wonderful receiver. And guess what? The 49ers just happen to be missing receivers. But he's a guy that I would definitely try to flip. I saw him go for a second. I saw Mike Davis go for a second. I think James Robinson's a guy that I'm probably going to hold on to for a couple more weeks and see if I can't get that value up to a first because my man was already at a second. He was already at a second after his first week. And then if you saw what he did last week, you're like, well, hey now. So a couple guys like that, I can understand holding them another week because but Jet just feels like the guy like I need to get him off my roster before that potato explodes.
Tyrod Taylor. Can you get anything for him?
Jesus, you can't get anything for him. Can you?
I know.
You couldn't get anything for him?
Nah, couldn't get anything even before. Couldn't even get a third, which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, people didn't need quarterbacks in the offseason. So yeah, I mean, this is worst case scenario if you were holding Tyrod shares, because even if he comes back, I think the community has already written him off as like, this is a dumb coach away from, ever starting another game. So yeah, I mean, that's almost worst case scenario for his value.
Yep.
Anybody, last thing, you're buying. Anybody you're looking at right now going like, you know what, their value is going to keep going up. I'm getting in now so that 6 months from now I can say I bought low.
Oh, I'm so bad at buying low. I got to start doing that, huh? DJ Chark's a guy, if he has another week, I think you're going to be able to get a discount on. Jarvis Landry has had a couple bad weeks. Don't forget he's coming back from hip surgery. All the rookies, Cam Akers is persona non grata in most of my leagues right now. Any of the rookie running backs that struggled, unfortunately, he's really the only one. If J.K. Dobbins has a few more weeks where he's only getting 4 carries, you can try and shake the trees on him, see if that J.K. Dobbins owner is really committed to sitting, waiting on him for a whole year. But really, just Cam Akers is a guy I think I'm looking at right now. Like, he's got rib cartilage damage, right? So I'm not a doctor. That doesn't sound like it's conducive to playing football well.
Right.
And everybody is talking up that Sean McVay wants to use a 3-headed backfield. No, he doesn't. Just watch the games. Like, you see what happened. Like, the first game, Malcolm Brown was smashing, so you have to use him. The second game, Akers got hurt and Malcolm Brown got hurt. That's why Darrell Henderson got used. It's not even about a hot hand. I've heard that bandied about a little bit, and it's annoying me. But anyway, so Cam Akers, just keep an eye on him. He's probably going to have a couple more down weeks. And look, he's a guy that some of us were already sketchy on anyway, because he didn't have that great production in college because he ran behind a terrible offensive line, as you might have heard. But even that little bit of negativity that was in the back of people's heads, I'm sure it's making its way to the front of their cortex. What's that? Frontal cortex? I don't know. The front of your brain. Yep. That's where it's going.
So here's 2 I'll throw out there, and we'll end it on this. I'm buying into the efficiency. We've talked about efficiency like 5 times already on this show. A.J. Dillon is one. I was never a big A.J. Dillon guy, but we talked about Aaron Jones's contract. If Aaron Jones were to get hurt tomorrow and A.J. Dillon just assumed, let's just say, a lot of the goal line work and a lot of the grinding work for Green Bay, even though he probably wouldn't be the receiving back. I mean, I could see if you took Aaron Jones away tomorrow, I could see a 12 touchdown season for A.J. Dillon. And I could see, maybe a couple games where he does have the Derrick Henry-esque, 124, 130 yard games with 2 touchdowns. So that's one. Another one, you're going to think I'm crazy for this, but there's been some positive news about him. And he's just kind of lingering back there, and you probably have to get in now before there's any other positive news coming forth. I still think Rashad Penny's worth buying. I can just see the narrative now where you get to week 10 and that offense is still humming. And if he just has a couple games where he's involved, the train could get going again. And I don't think he's being talked about right now. I think with all the injuries, he's just kind of there. He's on somebody's roster. They won't sell him to you for a 4th or, fab dollars. But if you come to him with the Mike Davis or something like that, if you can't get a 2nd, maybe get a 3rd and you need to get one of those other guys thrown in. You know what I mean? Get Rashad Penny thrown into the deal, because 6 weeks from now, you could look back and go, I sold Mike Davis. He hasn't seen a snap in 2 weeks. And Rashad Penny's about to come back, and then boom, he's an injury away from, a guy you can maybe start. So those are 2 just to keep in mind that I think they're just kind of being forgotten at this point.
Look, Penny's so cheap that, yeah. And you know what? I know everyone has available roster spots because you can place basically anyone on the IR now. Just everybody goes on the IR for 3 games. So it's awesome. So you have so much flexibility on your roster space. I went in the one league the other day and saw that I had 6 bench spots available.
Nice.
So I just pick guys up left and right. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
And then Tuesday morning you go and you have a bunch of, maybe you have some IR violations or whatever. But, hey, it's fun. That's what makes it fun this year. It's just a constant whirlwind of there's something to do in Dynasty every single day. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So any final thoughts? We kind of were all over the place in this episode, but this was just us catching up and talking about what's happened in the first couple weeks.
No, man, just hopefully everyone stays safe, enjoys the football, don't complain about the football. I was one of the guys that was concerned that there wasn't going to be any football, so you're not going to catch me complaining about the football. Enjoy it. This is fun stuff. If you don't enjoy it, then don't do it. If you're in too many leagues like me, just think about next year maybe cutting back so you can enjoy it even more.
Well, and I appreciate those words, because you know what? I've been one to kind of say, oh my gosh, I'm in so many leagues. I don't have enough time to do podcasts. I don't have enough time to focus on all the leagues that I want. We sit here and talk in theory about, hey, Shane, who are you flipping for a second, or who are you trying to go shop? Quite frankly, when you're in 50 plus leagues, you don't have time to go through and meticulously go, okay, I have 7 players that I could try to flip. Let me spam every single team for a pick, or let me send out 10 offers in 40 leagues. It's not possible to do, but this is what we signed up for. You know what I mean? This is what we love. Ultimately, there may be a day where I'm kind of, I've had enough and I'm ready just to call it quits, put my phone down, maybe go to sleep, and then wake up the next morning. I'm up at 6 o'clock going, oh, let me check some teams. Let me look at this roster. Can I IR anybody? Did waivers run? What's in my email? Like every day it's fun. So just remember that, and, reach out to the people that you love too. You never know what's going to happen. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. I mean, we lost a good dude in the community this week.
Exactly. Out of nowhere. Could have been any of us.
Yep.
Right around our age too, man. I mean, that's...
Yeah. Really great dude. Really good dude. So that's what brought it to mind, is just, man, it's like the second time just in this little community that we've lost someone in the span of 2 months. And that's just, just off people that I know. I'm sure there's many, 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 many other people out there. So, man, if this is what you like, enjoy it. Just enjoy it, and tell the people that you like them, because you never know when you'll get to talk to them again, or if you'll get to talk to them again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I made a point to, make sure I called everybody or reached out to everybody that I could think of, and just, hey, how you doing? Hope all is well. So just keep that in mind, because it is just a game that we play, and we're blessed to be able to, kind of do this every single day, even if it's not a full-time job. We're blessed to be able to do it, and do it to the capacity that we do. So with that, let us know future topics. We'll try to do an episode every week. Honestly, I think we can probably get together. I had a really busy last couple weeks, so it was hard for me to jump in and do a full episode, but I think there's so much going on, Shane, that we can probably just jump on and, get one of these out every week and just talk shop, talk players, talk injuries, talk strategy, talk what's going on. Cause it's the one thing with the off season. It's really hard to focus on like theory. It's really hard to focus on like a lot of trends and stats, because it's changing so fast. By the time we digest it, record an episode, and it gets posted, there's been another week. So It's like everything just changed. Everything we said last week can be totally different a week from now. So we'll try to throw one of these together, and just let us know if you have any topics. Maybe we'll do like a mid-season Q&A type of episode as well, where you can ask Shane and I anything. We
might not answer.
Just Dynasty.
I might not answer.
We'll see. We'll put some parameters together. But Dynasty Trades HQ, Dynasty and Chill. Shane is the worst. At Charles Chill, FFB. Dynasty League Football. We have a content coming out. I think there's like 20 articles a day at this point. So just check it out. Dynasty League Football. And till next time, any final words, Shane?
No, just stay safe, y'all.
Yep. Stay safe. Catch you guys later.